Hey everyone, Eric Rutherford here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. So a few months ago, I had an idea that I wanted to start a conversation. I wanted to start a conversation to hear about other people's stories that were unlike my own, and where we would dive deep and talk about everything from politics to religion to sexual identity to attraction to the journey that we're all on, the journey that shapes us all. So I hope you join me as we talk about stories and we talk with each other and we learn a little bit more how, as much as we're different, we're also the same.
Yeah, it was really great. I love the Fluid Project. I'm so
too.
excited that we're here. I heard they have this new Mattel collection. Oh my god.
Yes.
Ah!
Oh my.
These outfits. Oh, these tote bags. I think the hair is so major.
The hair is major. I mean, how fantastic to have this.
I actually wish that I had this wig in real life.
I would love that. That would you.
The problem with a big wig is it like really weighs down your neck though. You have to really develop your neck muscle.
Right. Oh my god. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. I am so filled with joy to be sitting here with you, and it's been such a pleasure that we our paths have crossed. You know, I so much is happening in your life. Certainly, a lot is happening in mine, and the timing of sitting here and talking with you, I just think both what's happening around us culturally. I know that you are just in LA even with your friend Sam, and something I want to talk about. But one of the things that I wanted to share is that you've been so much on my mind, and in the conversations that we've had, that even this morning when I was getting ready, you were with me. And what kind of came to me is, you know, it's how we project ourselves, right? Our insides out, you know, what we create through our clothing, through our expression and everything. And I was looking at what I was going to wear and what I wanted to be, and I realized I kept going to these dark colors, and it was safe. It was good for camera. But then it also made me start thinking like, well, here's my friend. They express themselves beautifully through color, there's a fearlessness. And so I went to kind of begin to grab those things, because that too is how I like to express myself. And so you were with me this morning, and so even today when you were coming, what were you thinking when you were getting dressed? What got you out of bed this morning?
Well, you know, I take fashion very seriously.
Yes, I know you do.
As if it's a matter of life or death, because it is. And glamour for me has never been frivolous, because I think when you don't get to control your body, style becomes not just a political statement, but an argument for legitimacy. I think from a young age, because I didn't consent to the gender or the sex or the race that I was assigned, style became a way of contesting and saying there's something more complicated going on here, and an argument for my own beauty, because the world told me that I was ugly and disposable and wrong, and I knew otherwise.
Right.
You know?
Oh wait, so what age was that?
I've always known.
Wow.
Maybe I didn't have the language or the comprehension or the identity frameworks, but I've always known an otherwise beauty. I've always known my beauty. And I think beauty is a really powerful framework to know. And I think beauty precedes an identity framework.
I agree.
And I think for me, my beauty was so powerful, it preceded language. It preceded saying I'm trans or I'm gender nonconforming. My beauty propelled me to those words. It propelled me to express myself despite the backlash that I would experience. And a lot of people ask me all the time, you know, why do you continue to manifest yourself despite the constant vitriol that you experience? And I'm like, well, why would I deny the world my beauty?
Oh my god! I love it, of course.
Like,
why would you?
What, like, that would be a travesty for
Right.
the world. Like, why would I why would I deny myself and the world such extravagance and such lusciousness, you know? Me existing in this universe makes this world an iota less tragic.
Completely. So you said, you know, because I'm always fascinated by where we come, right? Our families, the places that we grew up in, the cultures, the cities that we're around. And for you to be so clear at such a young age, I know I certainly wasn't at all. I mean, I certainly struggled with, I love my parents, but they had their own identity, so to speak, that they were very much invested in. And so for me, in the sense of even just because of the way that I looked, where I grew up, where there's always been an aspect of mine of hiding. So for you to have that, you were saying it came from within you, but did your family kind of support that too?
No.
No? At all? Nothing?
I mean, yes, to some extent, but no. I think it's taken me a long time to understand that, like, the most formidable forms of glamour are those which are forcibly invisibilized.
Wait,
Meaning,
wow. Okay, explain that to me.
Sorry, I'm a poet.
No, I love your poetry. I love how you speak, but I want to make sure that when we're talking, it's, you know?
Of course. What I mean by that is we are so powerful that we have to be disappeared, because when we exist, they can't. When they see us, it calls into question their own insignificance, because they look at us and they have to think, how am I so mediocre? And that's why, since the beginning of time, queer people have posed a threat to cis hetero mediocrity, because they look at us and our glamorous lives, our impossibly glamorous lives, the families we make, the genders we create, the intimacy we sustain, and they look at their unhappy marriages, their unhappy unions, their unhappy families, and they see our joy and they see their tragedy, and they have to disappear us. And so I think what I learned is that the reason these people are so mean and so terrible to me is precisely because I'm beautiful. And this is what I try to tell people. If I wasn't so powerful, why are they trying to pass hundreds of pieces of legislation to get rid of me? If I wasn't so significant, why are they trying to legislate me out of existence? If I wasn't so significant, why are they targeting such a statistically insignificant community? Because we are a tiny percentage of the population, and yet we take up so much of their time. They're so pressed by us because we are so powerful. And that consciousness maybe wasn't conscious in my head and language, but it was there because it was walking down a hallway in elementary school and everyone staring at me because of the way that I walked. It was everyone...
Wait, even just the way you walked?
The way that I walked was too feminine. The way that I spoke was too feminine. The way that I gestured was too feminine. The way that I moved was too feminine. I was always too much of a pussy, too much of a girl, too much of a sissy, too much of this, too much of that. Like, everything betrayed me. It oozed out of me. And I didn't understand. I was just being myself, you know, but it was so ruthlessly and terrifyingly policed out of me. And I was taught to fear and shame the things that were most powerful in me. And I think that that's the message I bring to the world. It's that the things that we are taught to fear and to shame in ourselves are precisely our magic. Completely. That we're dispossessed of those things because those are the things that can actually change the world. Absolutely.
Yes. To, you know, it's, I won't say I'm envious or jealous of you. I find comfort in to hear that at such a young age you had that sense of self, right? Because for me, I know, and I think for many people too that I talk to or that reach out to me, I came out at 13 in a different decade, you know, in the 80s, and it was a very different time than it is now, yet it's still the same thing. and I don't think those labels have changed. It's, it's that fear of the unknown, that fear of reflecting back towards someone when you are stepping into a truth about yourself, right? And whether it is how you're identifying even the likes that you like or the things that you dislike, it creates, it makes people look at themselves. And to hear that you at such a young age already had that power, that it made people uncomfortable, I wanted to ask you when I was thinking about this, at such a young age, some people might go a different route.
Right.
Whether suicide,
right,
because they can't deal with the pressure of it.
Right.
They internalize this hate that is being thrust at them, and the fact that you survived,
right,
and have thrived, right?
Right.
I think it's such a powerful thing, and you, even in the conversations that we've had, you've said there's the highs and lows of it, the ebbs,
right,
the ebbs and flows of it, and even to the point where now you even, I know, moved recently, right, thinking from one community to the other, because even just the more you're yourself, there still is that threat of, because it makes people uncomfortable.
Right. It's not easy. Mm-mm. And I don't mean to romanticize it. I'm done with triumph narratives. People want easy triumph narratives, where they call us brave, and where they're like, wow, you're so strong, and you've overcome so much, and you're so confident, I'm so proud of you. Don't be proud of me. Be ashamed of yourself that you have made me suffer so much to have to be so strong to do this. Why wasn't I allowed to have a childhood? Why wasn't I allowed to be boring? Why did I have to fight tooth and nail when other kids were just allowed to relax? Why do I have to think about my safety every single day? Why do I live with debilitating chronic pain? Why do I have to navigate thinking about other people's anxieties and projections every moment of my life? Why do I have to never have the kind of assurity and comfort that comes from success that other people have, because it can be removed?
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Just, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
Because I know October 8th, right?
Yeah.
Is a big date that's coming up. And I wanted to talk about this in the sense of, here's the thing. Part of the reason I wanted to have these conversations and us particularly sit down and talk is, I've always approached living, right, is we all want to find our place in the world.
Yeah.
Right? And whatever that might look like. Be seen, valued, loved, respected for how we participate in the world. And just have basics, right? To be able to have a job, to support ourselves,
right,
roof over our head,
right,
have a family, whatever that might look like. And yet, coming up on October 8th, I want you to talk about it a little, why this date is so important, particularly for this community, but even beyond just our community, but beyond that, and just the culture in general.
Right. So for the people who might not know, on October 8th, they're trying to decide whether they can legally discriminate against us in a professional setting on the basis of our gender identity. And this is part of an orchestrated effort in this country to discriminate against trans and gender nonconforming workers on the basis of our gender identity and expression, but they're using an argument of, quote, religious freedom, or increasingly they're using dress code violation, right?
Oh my God.
So,
wait, I'm sorry. That is comical.
Right, it's ridiculous. And they just don't want to call a spade and say this is transphobia. And it's part of a larger effort to say that trans people are not protected by sex-based discrimination. So they're saying that gender identity is not part of the legal category of sex, and that trans people are just choosing our genders, and therefore it's not part of this category of biological sex, right? And this is a historic effort to project trans people as just willfully choosing our genders. It's our conscientious choice. It's not who we are. That trans people are just constructed, where cis people are somehow real, right? And at every level, it's important to reinforce the fact that trans people are indeed biological, are indeed real, and are indeed worthy of protection by every non-discrimination ordinance. That trans people are sophisticated, intellectual, and hardworking laborers and deserve recognition in any employment field. But I think that for me, when we're talking about the basics, where we're at as gender variant and gender nonconforming people, and for those of you who might not know, to be gender nonconforming is to visibly defy what society understands a man or a woman to look like. So there are gender nonconforming people who might be cisgender. Cisgender are people who identify with the gender they were ascribed at birth. And there are gender nonconforming people.
As I do, that's right. Yep.
So that might be someone who's more of a feminine man or more of a masculine woman. And there are gender nonconforming people like me who are transgender, who identify with a different gender than they were assigned at birth. But these people, us, we look different than what society thinks that we should be looking like as a normative gender. We visibly question what society thinks a normative gender should look like. We can't even exist in public without people interrogating everything about us, right? So when we're talking about like basic ability to function, in a city like New York, like I can't exist in public without extreme scrutiny of everything. Like,
so I'm going to interrupt you because we've talked about this before, and you know, you just existing, you just living your life, your truth, right? And that's what everybody really wants.
Yeah.
For you though to do that, you are constantly creating conflict, so to speak, because you're forcing people, because even if they're just walking by you, right, to reflect upon themselves, which to me, I actually enjoy. And not that it should be a conflict, but that you're engaging, it's opening up people's perspective. And do you think people, and it's a two-part what I want to ask you, do you think people are reacting because they're checking themselves, their level of discomfort within their own selves and living their truth? And also, do you see the power of what you're doing to also then create conversation? Because I think so often people, I certainly know how I grew up in the cultures that I was around, and whether it was the country club or, you know, or the school, that college that I went to, or whatever it might be. I came out young, and I was exposed to everything from trans to drag queens to people expressing themselves differently at a very young age. But I know the majority of the people that I grew up with, and my family in general, even to this day, I was having a conversation with my mom. She doesn't know how, but she wants to learn. She wants to understand. So when you're walking down the street and someone has the reaction to you, or you're meeting someone for the first time, do you see it as an opportunity, or does that just become exhausting? Because you are a public. I have to say, you are living your life. You're a public figure, particularly you're a performance artist.
Yeah.
So you are on the stage, and one of the things that I love that you said, and when I was reading, kind of doing the research and wanted to know more, was that when you fall, you go to grab something, right? And when you were falling, trying to figure out where you grab the stage.
Right. Yeah, I think the stage for me was such a sacred space because it's one of the only places in our culture where those of us who are assigned male at birth can like explore gender, because the shackles of masculinity are so tight. It's so
suffocating.
It's so suffocating. Like if you at all challenge gender, you are punished and beaten and assaulted. And so performance was one of the few spaces that I could like chill and like try eyeliner and like put on a dress, you know?
Yes.
And people could actually like clap for me and like cheer me on, and I began to like it, and I was like, oh my God. And that's why.
When did you first start performing?
So actually, when I was a little kid, I used to do like proto drag shows in my living room. I grew up as part of like a tight-knit Indian community in my small town in Texas, and I used to basically lip sync to Bollywood songs. So I would take my mom's clothes and I would just basically dress up like a Bollywood diva and just kind of like put on shows for everyone.
That is fantastic.
And everyone,
which, again, the crazy thing, what kid hasn't?
Hello. And everyone was like so here for it, no problem. We were all good. Everyone thought it was so cute. It just became an issue when I like hit puberty, and then it was like, grow up, like move on. It's no longer cute.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
But performance was like my first outlet to be like, you can do that, and you can get validation for it. And that idea that you could be affirmed for gender nonconformity, that was linked to performance for me. And so I sought the stage really aggressively, and I sought that kind of validation. But then that became insufficient because I was like, you're only okay with that when I'm entertaining you. And that's the issue in our culture.
You just gave me chills.
People are only okay with people like me whenever we're entertaining you. You think that we're a prop that's here for your entertainment, but the minute that we're actually like, well, I'm not here to entertain you, I'm just actually existing, then we become a problem, right? So that's a problem because I'm okay to do that, like if you're paying me to come to one of my shows.
Sure.
But if I'm just like existing, I'm not here for your entertainment. I'm just existing,
right?
You know? And that's a double standard because we allow cis and gender normative people and gender conforming people to just exist in public without having to put on a show. But when you're trans and gender nonconforming, you're already always seen as entertaining, which means that you're already always seen as deserving or asking for it. So that means when I experience violence, people just blame me for it. They're like, well, you chose to dress this way. You dressed up like this.
That's like saying to a girl who's raped.
Of course. I get this all the time. People are always telling me like, well, you shouldn't have dressed so flamboyantly, or you dressed up like this, what did you expect? Or like, of course, like you look like this, like no one's gonna take you seriously. There's always this idea of, you dress like a fool, so why would people take you seriously? And it's like, why is the emphasis always on what my appearance is and rather not on how people are treating or relating to me, right? Yeah. But people have these far-fetched ideas that how we look is related to how we should be taken seriously. Anyways, but I think that when you're asking me about visibility and what that brings up for people and why they have such intense reactions, I mean, I think a lot of that is what I'm writing about these days. Is my work is deeply spiritual because it's a meditation on why are people so upset when they see someone like me living so freely. It's not just about gender.
Sure, of course not.
It's absolutely not. It's actually about vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think a lot of my work is about mental health at the end of the day. Because what it is why are people so repressed that when they see someone living their truth, their first reaction is not to say, thank you for showing me how to live truth, but rather to say, repress yourself.
Right. Close those doors, close doors. I don't want to see this.
And it's because they have been told to repress themselves. And that they've been taught that the only way to exist is to repress themselves. So when they see someone else showing them you don't have to repress themselves, rather than being like, whoa, thank you for showing me another way to live, they say, once again, if you exist, then the only way that I've been taught to live is not the only way to live. And that opens a door for me, and that's too terrifying. I can't go there. So rather than going there, I'm gonna have to eliminate you from my field of vision.
Right.
So then that for me, once again, shows me how powerful trans existence is, that actually there's no such thing as transgender issues. They're issues that cis people have with themselves that they're working out on us.
I'm so glad you said that. Because that you said that I think in another interview or something, and it just it resonated with me. It stayed with me because I remember when I came out to my family, and you know, I had been molested a few years earlier, and so it kind of opened a door for me, just, you know, the confusion around that, but it really led me to the path then to actually finding my truth, right? And to say, this is who I am, I love this about me. So when I went to share with my family, I thought it was the norm, it was normal, this was just who I was. Just as like, this is my arm, these are my legs, this is the color, this is my skin. This is who I am. And it caused such a reaction because it was saying to them, or how they interpret it was, what did we do wrong? How could you be this way? How were you created this way? Could we have done something different so that you weren't this way? This is just a I mean, every kind of classic, stereotypical, whatever reaction. And I know at the time, and that's why, again, I'm so fascinated that you had such a clarity at such a young age. I knew I was clear about it at the time, and then it just got wrapped in shame. It got wrapped in feeling unsafe. And I was said that, they were said, you could stay in this home as long as you behave a certain way, and that only lasted for so long. I just remember thinking there was such a clarity for me at the time, and yet then all these layers and all these labels and everything started getting placed upon me to survive. Like, you have to be this way. Fine, if you want to be this way, okay. But you will not say it to this person, or you will not see this person, or you will kill this person if you say this to you will cause such damage. And you have torn apart the idea of the American dream or the American family, or this kind of false sense of what it is to be happy, right?
But conditional freedom is not freedom.
At all.
And that's the crisis of this country. That's the crisis of this movement, is that it's falling apart because it only got its marriage through condition.
Yeah.
And I think that what I'm provoking in people is the limit of condition. Because when when allegiance comes in through condition, it's a tenuous connection.
The limits of condition.
Because when condition works in, it basically says, as long as we're just like you. But the truth is, everyone's queer, everyone's weird, everyone's depressed, everyone's struggling, everyone's vulnerable, everyone's lonely. And I think this is where sobriety really comes in, is you really begin to recognize that everyone has a deep chaos and pain within them, right?
100%.
We function as if we're all like just floating, we're wonderful, and like we get married and we're like, wow, everything's wonderful. But like when you really start to be honest with your life, you're like, there's a deep pain existentially in all of us. Absolutely. We're all suffering, And if we're really honest about that suffering, we actually learn in this culture not how to deal with pain and suffering, we learn how to compartmentalize pain and suffering.
To me, it's, again, closing things out. You were so kind. We were talking earlier that, I had shared about a process that I was just going through, and I find great power in that. I love my vulnerability. I love my sensitivity. I love all of that, and I love sharing it because I think it certainly is self-help, right? But I am proactive and believe so strongly that we live by example, and that's why I feel so connected to you. It's the more you live your truth, end of the day, the happier you are, but also the impact that you can create in the people around you, in the society around you. And so in me sharing my vulnerability, and I kind of shared on one of my platforms and about something I was going through, and you were so kind to ask me like how I was and what had gone on and the reaction that had happened, and it was fascinating because I again was very raw in what I shared and processed, and I think that empowers other people. I look the way that I look. I know that, and every day, even at the age that I am, I learn more about what this means and what the impact and the influence that it has in this culture, in this society, both whether it is just as being white, whether it's being white male, cisgender. And so I like being able to say, listen, here I am. Traditionally, I am told to be, or if I am to be a strong man or masculine or whatever it is, you shouldn't be this way, you should be this way. Well, no, that's not how I am. That's not how I choose to be. And I actually find great power in being raw. And it was interesting, though, so when in sharing this, I was sharing process. As much to help myself go through, but also to, if someone I know when I was growing up, and even now, it can be such a lonely place.
Right.
But to find others like you, to see like, you know what? And again, I was saying to you this morning, it's like, I love that we are building this friendship because I find great, one, you bring me great joy knowing you, but also the strength in that, and in sharing that, and people reached out. But there were also I had negative reaction.
But I don't think you were just sharing process, you were sharing pain.
For sure.
And in a culture that teaches us to numb ourselves to pain and to conceal and to make our pain discreet and to privatize our pain, that's an extremely threatening action, right? And I think that pain, like public vulnerability, must be repressed. And I think that what I'm doing is I'm staging my vulnerability, I'm staging my pain to the world, I'm staging my honesty to the world, and the world can't handle that, you know? And so that causes more pain and more vulnerability and more anguish. But for me, the way that I take a lot of my cues from the way that our bodies work, right? And
how so?
I learn a lot about like how trauma manifests in our bodies.
Oh.
And I learned a lot about how muscle tension works, right? And when you have a sore muscle, right, and you have a trigger point that gets formed, the way that you heal a trigger point is not by like ignoring it. You have to dig into the trigger point. And it's going to hurt more at first. And then once the tension is addressed, that's when it's going to dissipate, right?
I believe the exact same thing.
You have to go into the cultural trigger point. And that so much of the entertainment and modeling industry is like avoid the trigger point at all costs. But I actually believe culturally we have to locate the trigger point and dig in.
I agree.
And right now in the society right now, gender is the trigger point. And we have to dig into that trigger point and we have to think about what is coming up for us in this moment. And rather than shying away from that, we have to dig into that trigger point. We have to expose the depths, the carnality of that flesh. And we have to actually say, it's not as scary as we made it out to be.
Okay, sorry. I'm having a moment right now. I mean, sorry, let me catch my breath for a second. It's not as scary as we made it out to be. And that is, God, that really hit me. Because it's the truth in that. One is so simple.
But because, I mean, what people's reaction to you sharing your pain is because the thing about projection is it makes us make the pain worse than the pain actually is. When we repress things, we build them up to be worse than they actually are. So it's counterintuitive because this is the thing that repression does, is it makes the wound fester, so the wound actually takes on a life of its own.
Yes.
And so when we spend our entire life avoiding trauma, trauma compounds and it takes on an afterlife to the traumatic incident, which is why when we as queer people don't address our foundational traumas, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's why I see our queer movement as one big traumatic unresolved episode, you know? And I see so many of the inter-community dynamics. We were talking about the ways in which cis gay men treat trans people. All those dynamics for me is you're taking out your family trauma out on me. Our movement trauma is our family dynamics abstracted. And I understand it. That does not mean I enable it, but I contextualize it.
Right.
You feel like no one understood how hard it was for you growing up because your parents didn't accept you. That's real. But that does not give you license to commit violence. And it is violence against members of your own community in the name of your own injury. Rather, you need to heal yourself so that you can join us in the struggle. And I commend you for working on yourself publicly because I think what gay men need to be doing in this country right now is working on themselves emotionally because they mistook legal recognition as therapy.
Oh my God, yes.
And it's like, y'all might have gotten equality, but you still hate yourself.
Oh my God, sorry.
And it's really sad to see.
It is. Right, it is. It is sad. It's yeah. Well, here's the thing. Listen, I think, again, this whole sense of community, right? And then within the community, right, wait a minute, you talking where we're all, equality is equality. Equality is for everyone. It's not just for a part of it. It's for all. And, you know, what I love too, you're talking about is that sense of what it is to be male now, I think, is being upended. You know, one of the values, and I wanted to talk about this, how social media has played a part, and I believe it plays a positive part, because I feel it has allowed people to share their stories. Yes, I know it can be just, it's a picture sometimes, but then there's a video, there's a platform, it's sharing your poetry. It's allowed people to also find others like themselves, and to step in to find a strength in that. And that's part of the reason I share what I share. And I constantly am searching. Like I was aware of you before we even met.
Right.
And I feel, and I obviously, because I kind of work in, we'll say, in the men's space more, and also I have an invested interest in that, because I've always looked at and questioned what it is to be a man, male, or what is masculinity, what is femininity. Are you too sensitive? Are you not sensitive enough? Shutting down emotion, and I feel I've seen a shift, and I would love to hear if you feel you've seen it, even just how men in the last few years have begun to be more comfortable with expressing themselves. Yes, I think with our current administration, I think it's fueled the fire for a certain anger, forgottenness, not feeling seen, again, however you want to describe it. But I also feel more men, more people are stepping into themselves and stepping into a truth. And tell me, maybe you see it differently, but
I'm just gonna be blunt with you.
No, I want you to.
Summer 2019, and men are still not wearing skirts.
Oh.
It's so hot. What are you thinking? Like, there's a lot of issues that I have with men, but this is one of them. Like, if you're gonna be this dumb to think that you're gonna lose masculinity because you wear a skirt, bitch, it is so fucking hot outside. Like, you are gonna gain the most from wearing a fucking skirt outside. Like, this is ridiculous.
Oh my God, you're making me cry.
And this is the bigger point I have to make, is that men are gonna benefit from the annihilation of the gender binary just as much as the rest of us, because first of all, your fashion is gonna cease to be boring and irrelevant. And second of all, your outfits are gonna actually be functional with climate apocalypse. It's just like, hello, like if I see another men's fashion week with just the same boring pinstripe, navy black, literally disappear into the night, I'm falling asleep.
Yes.
So it's a little glacial pace for me. I'm a little bored. And I also feel like when men move an inch, we're like, wow. We're like, groundbreaking. We're like,
you're right.
Congratulations.
You're right.
Like a man just says, like, I'm a feminist, and we're like, a million thought pieces. We're like, congratulations, you did it. Or like, a man like
here's an award. An award.
Exactly.
Like Billy Porter was saying, like,
hello.
Yeah.
A man like says the trans person's pronouns, and we're like, congratulations. And yet we have some of the most talented and incredible women in trans performers, activists, directors, doing some of the most incredible work of our time, right? And I think that and this is what you're doing right now, I think that there's time now for us to be redistributing and reallocating our time, intention, resources, and energy to be uplifting creators who are doing something different.
Yep.
So I guess where my heart and my energy is less actually about trying to kind of redefine man, as I am about let's invest in trans people who are already doing that work. And let's actually put the thought leadership in the men's space to trans people who are already doing that work. Like, why is it that the men's magazines, the men's fashion, that the men's world is not looking to trans leadership when I'm already doing that work?
Why do you think?
I think it's because men are transphobic. I think it's because...
Wait, is it, okay, so define, I mean, I know what I mean, but define transphobic, because I find that good.
Right.
Define it.
For sure. Like, I think that in my career, the women's fashion world has been so much more receptive of me than the men's fashion world.
Really?
Which makes no sense, because I'm non-binary, which means I'm doing men's fashion, I'm doing women's fashion, I'm doing neither, I'm doing my own thing.
Right.
But
because you've even made your own clothes.
Yes.
Yeah. I
design my own clothes. I'm the most relevant street style blogger in New York City. And it pains me, because I'm like, I could accelerate the conversation in men's fashion so much. I could really push this dialogue around men's style, around men's grooming, around the men's conversation so much, but there's a hostility there. Once again, it's that trigger point where they don't want to push it because they're afraid of the backlash. And
so backlash. Sorry to interrupt you. Backlash, in the sense of commercially, capital, like
all of it,
to all of it.
All of it. I mean,
like if GQ embraced,
and
not that they're the kind of end all be all.
Let's be clear. Like what's being embraced in this gender neutral turn is not people like me. What's being embraced in this gender neutral turn is a kind of soft masculinity where it's like suits are gender neutral. It's not dresses and gowns are gender neutral. It's like a kind of like gray is gender neutral. It's not like fuchsia is gender neutral. Like my gender neutrality is not the kind of like androgyny that will make it onto the cover of GQ.
Right.
Because I'm seen as too much. And to be too much is that same old homophobia. It's what we saw happen in the Stonewall era, where the screaming queens are seen as too much, and the moderate gays are the ones who get the victories.
Right.
This is what we're seeing in the trans movement now. The respectable binary trans people are the people who will get the accolades, and then those of us who are visibly gender nonconforming are seen as too much, and we have to sit and wait. But I'm not willing to sit and wait.
Why should you?
Why should I? I'm willing to push the conversation and actually say, until we actually end the gender binary, and for people who are not familiar with that conversation, when I say I want to end the gender binary, I'm not saying I want every single person in the world to be non-binary. People mistake that. They're like, you're taking away our men, you're taking away our right to be women. I want to be a man, I am a woman. I'm like, you can be a man or woman. When I'm saying I want to end the gender binary, what I'm saying is man and woman are two options of many. You can still be a man or woman, but those are two options of many. Man and woman exist as two stars of a constellation. They are no longer polar opposites.
Right.
They are actually in harmony. In a world where man and woman are not polar opposites, we would have so much less violence, because when you said I'm a man, that would not mean therefore there's nothing feminine about me. And when people said I'm a woman, that would not mean there's nothing masculine about me. That would mean femininity and masculinity exist in coalition and in tandem.
Completely.
Not in mutually exclusive oppositional binarisms. And that actually helps everyone, right? But in the same way, what we're getting around spirituality and mental health, the reason people repress that idea is because that pain kind of cycle, that also links to that idea of dichotomy. We have to have clear distinction and compartmentalization. You go over here, I go over here. This over here, this over here. And what you did when you express your vulnerability is it blurs boundaries. And we can't have boundary blurs. We need things over here put in this box. You go over here and this go in this box. But I think that what's most beautiful for me creatively, aesthetically, is actually recognizing that blurring the boundaries is essential, because the boundaries limit us, you know?
Completely.
That all of us are actually blurred, that the most incredible beauty in the world comes when we recognize that these are just borders that are constraining us. And as an artist, I'm held back when I think about categories, that actually what propels me is sensation, not category. I think, like when you were asking me how I got dressed this morning, I think about what is the energy I want to commit to the world.
Yes. But so here's the fascinating with that, right? And this is why I get so excited by this. You literally just said, what is the energy I want to convey to the world? I feel everyone says the exact same thing. They may not be completely conscious of it, but there's more similarity than there is difference, right? And it's whether it's people just don't have the terms or the comfort or whatever it is, but we all wake up in the morning. You know, I say this thing, I used to train customer service, and I was like, no one wakes up in the morning and says, I just want to be average today.
Right.
No, because when you say that, when you confront someone with that, or say it to them, or say it in a conversation, they're like, no, of course not. Why would I just want to be average? No, they want to be their best. They want to live their best life. Yes, they may say it's too much of an Oprah term or whatever, but that's the truth. So you saying that to me, in sense of getting up, what is the energy? Every single person, however you identify, feels the exact same way. It's just, I find it interesting how then it gets convoluted, twisted because they're doing it's the same energy, don't you think?
If the CEOs are all white cis straight men, their energy is going to look pretty homogenous.
Well, I guess at the core root, I guess is where I'm going, and I guess maybe it's me being hopeful, maybe it's me believing that because I have danced kind of many different communities, so to speak, whether it's when I was, I worked with the NFL, and so this is a certain kind of community, or whether it's, I've always been in the arts, so it's from a very young age, similar to you, so I've been in that, so it's where I have always found something certainly consistent element was certainly myself, that I identified in all of these places. I found a way to connect in all of these communities, so I feel I've always carried that with me. And so that, for me, why I also find it very exciting, and to hear you say have this energy, is I feel in what we're saying is if people can allow themselves, and that's why I'm so engaged and in love with who you are as a person and how you are living your life, because I feel I identify with that as well. It's if people can find that within themselves, because I do feel there are more, again, we are the same. Just drop what they have been told they are supposed to be like, to be successful, to find love, to express themselves, to be emotional, to be vulnerable. I feel, and I guess and even at a young age, I can remember I had a nickname called the Peacemaker. And whether it was because I always felt I had to navigate and figure out how to be less threatening to people, to be able to stay in the room, stay in the space, yet still participate. So I always had to look at people and be able to dissect and jump in and find a way to connect with someone, as much so that I wasn't threatening to them, and I could stay. But so I was always able to dissipate tension, violence. And I remember distinctly there were moments where literally these two guys were about ready just to kill each other. Because, I don't know, for some ridiculous thing they were fighting over. And I just remember looking up to them and being able to find a way to connect with them, so it dissipated this rage. It unscrewed this tightness that they were feeling and feeling that was the way they had to express themselves. And I've always carried that with me, and and so in doing kind of what we're doing and living my life now, it's like stripping away that, going back to that, and saying that that's always been a part of me. It's always been a part of me, and whether it's because I felt people turned away from me and didn't want to people didn't want to see me for who I was, or what I am, or how I identify. So I've always found it in myself to be able to find that in someone else, to make them feel comfortable. And so I know it's, and I know, I think I was reading about it or listening to one of your interviews, you talked about it's, every day for you, we said it earlier, it's every day you just living your life. It's a form of activism. And I know we talked about India, and even Sam now, like making this shift, which I want to talk about for a second. And that there's you have shifted in how you see the world and how you approach the world. And have you found, and maybe I'm not verbalizing it correctly, but as opposed to this kind of like this fight, there's more of a gentleness, like, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
I know I just went on and on and on, but it's...
Yeah, there is a gentleness in me, of course. I really believe in coalition, but I think for me that coalition has to be one that humanizes me. And I think that for me, for so long in my career, I have been dehumanized as an aesthetic and not as a person. And every meaningful collaboration, I want my full personhood as a creative to be centered. And I think that that's really hard in this moment where, and I think it's a good time to maybe talk about pronouns, right?
Yes.
where, like, for example, when my friend Sam disclosed to the world that they were using they them pronouns.
Sam Smith, right?
Associated Press had an article where it said, like, Sam Smith, pop star, discloses his pronouns are they them. His pronouns are they them. That's always this transphobic refrain where our pronouns, aka our personhood, are some theory or some option, some opinion that we are choosing. And that relates to what we were saying about the Supreme Court case, that our gender is some opinion that we're saying and not some sort of fact.
Right.
That our identity is some sort of preference that's up for debate and not actually who we are as a person, right? I can't tell you how many times I've been invited onto set, I've been invited to be part of a campaign where I get there and I am misgendered. And I'm like, okay, so you are trying to make money from me and from my image and from having me on this, and I'm getting misgendered by every single person here. What's going on? That's not humanizing me, that's reducing me into an aesthetic. I don't have control of these situations, I'm just a pawn in them, you know? And so I think that I'm kind of exhausted.
Well, can I interrupt
Yeah.
for a second? I guess maybe I'm biased. I
Yeah.
don't look at you as a pawn
Yeah.
by any means. I understand stepping into that. Do you also take the opportunity, though, in that? Because it will, listen, I'm sure it must get frustrating, hurtful, uncomfortable, once again, you know, particularly if someone's there, has invited you there, not right, to kind of participate. Are you able to, in this gentleness we're talking about, then say, okay, here is an opportunity
Right.
to,
Yes and
or is
no.
that, yeah, okay.
In some circumstances, yes, but then there's disproportionate scrutiny when you come from a minority community and you advocate for yourself. And I think that's a note around allyship. The onus is always on us, but then when we do it, we're seen as hyper-emotional, nitpicky, aggressive, trying to cause a fuss, not cooperative, not a team worker, make it all about ourselves, selfish. These are all words that get levied on us. Whereas if some cis person is just like, that was not cool, this is standard. Like, the best sets that I've been on is we're on the call sheet, all of our pronouns are already there,
Right.
all our genders are already there, someone else is already like due diligent, they don't even make a fuss about it. When people mess up, they're just like, we move on. And it just becomes standard like that. Like, I think a lot, especially as a performer, I think a lot about protocol. When I walk into a venue, I want us to have already degendered the restrooms. I want us to already have protocol around IDs. When people walk in, a lot of the people coming to my shows are trans. Their names might identify with IDs. They may not look like the images they have on their IDs. I want security to be ready for that. I want us to already have protocol around how we're gonna do if folks who are coming who are undocumented. Like, I want us to already be thinking around this stuff and to have intention around this stuff, right? And to normalize that. Because when we don't normalize that, we're making assumptions about what kind of person are we imagining would be coming to this show? Or what kind of person are we imagining would be buying this product? What kind of person are we marketing to? What kind of person? That's what we need to shift. And I still think that in our industry, the imagination of a person is still a white straight cis man.
I 100% agree.
And we still have such a long way to go. And it's not just about a diversity consultation, it's about a recalibration of what it means to be a human being. And the way that we do that, for me, is actually about humanizing ourselves. That's the piece. If there's one thing I want to get across, is it doesn't come from looking at me and saying, you're so brave, thank you for sharing your story. It looks from saying, let me work on my trauma. Like, that's what I'm trying to get across the world. Don't just feel bad for me. Feel deeply intimate with yourself. And once you come into terms with your own emotional arc and your own journey and your own trauma and your own existential pain and your own suffering, then your empathy will grow. And that's your own journey.
I agree.
Only through coming into terms with your own sobriety journey, only through coming into touch with your own emotional journey, were you able to develop an active allyship.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, there's no way, it would be disingenuous.
Completely.
And I feel like there's a lot of disingenuous lip service out there because people haven't done their own emotional work.
Yeah. Well, and oh gosh, I mean, listen, you and we could, as we have, go talk for hours, and I know we will. And I just think what you've just said, it's humanizing the whole thing, right? It's humanizing the conversation. And I so have loved us having this conversation, and I feel like there might be a part 2 at some point, because what I hear, and it's a process. It is a process changing culture. I think obviously you start with yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And the more you work on that, and it's every day is work. You can't just, to me, it's, why do you just want to coast?
Right.
Why do you just want status quo? To me, that's not living. So what I find exciting about these conversations is that, one, I find it encouraging. I find it educational. I find it enlightening. I find it fun. I think it so often it's just learning. It's understanding, and also learning about yourself and seeing yourself in other people, and knowing that we can then walk out into the world and then share that with other people. And it's like you said, it's no big deal. Mm-hmm. It isn't. It doesn't need to be kind of have this kind of jolt or uncomfortableness or whatever.
Anxiousness.
Just,
it becomes a big deal when we're not emotionally aware and intelligent.
Agreed.
And I think that's why I return to emotional intelligence. I sound like a broken record at this level, but I think that this separation of the political and the emotional needs to be challenged. Like, for me, they're so deeply related. Politics and trauma are so deeply related. And I just really feel like that's the work of poetry for me. Poetry brings trauma and politics together. At any show that you go to, it's going to be a group therapy session.
I agree.
We're going to be crying together. We're going to be processing together. I just call them emotional watering holes. Like, where do we go in our culture to actually be like, I'm suffering, And that's how I think both of you and I are using our social media, is to just create a space to actually say, it's okay to not have your shit figured out. It's okay to be in process. It's okay to look like we do.
Yep.
It's okay to have the platforms that we do. It's okay to be public and to be a mess in public.
Yes.
It's okay to be messy. It's okay to be figuring it out. It's okay to be contradictory. It's okay to be a work in progress. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to put that out into the ether to actually be like, this myth that we have to be perfect, figured out, self-actualized, clear, coherent, smooth edges, that's what's killing us. Nothing is smooth. Everything is jagged. But the beauty of jagged edges is that when we both come together with jagged edges, we have friction, and friction makes fire, and fire is how we make beauty.
I think with that is, that could be the perfect way just to even end this part of the conversation. I adore you. Thank you for participating. It means so much to me. It just really means a lot to me. So thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.